Great. We are going to make a start. Thank you so much for being here this evening. It's a joy to have you out here. We have this evening we're going to be thinking about this topic of classroom management and doing that well in loving our children and what that looks like, particularly in some of our groups across Trinity Kids. We have the joy of having Kat with us. Kat, do you want to come on up? I'm just going to ask Kat a few things because most of us won't know who she is, and I'll say a bit more about what we're going to do. So Kat, we'd love to know who you are. Tell us a bit about yourself.
My name's actually Catherine, but Kat, I am a mum of two. I've got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. I always wanted to be a teacher. I went to train at 18, qualified at 21, and I'm on currently a small break due to some family reasons. But yeah, I've done 13 years of teaching, very involved within that with training new teachers and behaviour in kids that struggle more has always been my particular areas that I've been really passionate in, helping and supporting them. I've been a Christian for a lot of years. I grew up in a Christian family, it became my faith as a teenager. I went to university and carried on from there. I joined Christchurch when I was, 21 or something. So I was at Christchurch for a number of years, and then my husband and I went with the Redeemer plant to Winchester when we planted, not long before you guys. So that's a...
Wonderful. Kat is going to be coming out to do the bulk of our teach this evening. Thank you, Kat. But before she does, let me pray for us. Dear Father, we thank you and give you great thanks for the joy of having many children here at Trinity Church. And we ask that you would instruct us now as we consider what it looks like to love, care, protect, and teach them well. We long for all our children to know you and grow up in their relationship with you. And so we ask that as we consider how to manage our Trinity Kids classrooms well, you would give us rich insight into Christ and his model to us and how it is that we present him well. Bless Kat as she guides us. May you give her wisdom and be in our conversations as we reflect on how to do this well. In your son's name, amen. Let me share a bit about the structure for some things this evening. You've got a handout there and a list of those children that are in your group. If you look at your handout, there's a few things we're considering. I'll start by thinking about this first thing of the biblical principles of what it is and why we should consider classroom management. What does the Bible say? How should we consider this topic? And then I'm going to hand over to Kat, where we'll start by thinking about the big principles of classroom management and then trickle down as we go through more some of what that looks like to do in practice. So some of the principles, then we'll go on to some classroom management strategies, some roles of the leaders, what that looks like to be a leader and to support leader. And then I will finish off by talking about our behavioural management procedure after that. And then hopefully if we've got time at the end, we'll have time to pray in our groups. And Kat said she's willing to do a bit of Q&A as well. If there's anything, we'd love to glean her wisdom whilst we're here with her this evening. So that's the plan. And we'll have some discussion, as you may see looking through throughout. And it'd be great to be thinking about how some of the principles that Kat's teaching us, we can apply those into our settings of the groups we're in. So do think about that as you're hearing what she's saying for when we break into groups to discuss. Great. So let me begin with some biblical principles of classroom management and why should we do it. Well, I've got here 4 things. We need to manage the behaviour of our children in our care because firstly, the Bible instructs parents and adults to discipline their children. Ephesians 6:4 says, "Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord." You'll note here it's a command. Bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. So in honouring and submitting to the Lord, this is something that we must do. Chiefly to parents, but for us too as leaders in the responsibility that we have looking after children on Sunday mornings. We would be disobedient to not do this, to not grow them up in the discipline that God shows us. And that's what the Bible instructs us to do. But this isn't just a command. Secondly, managing behaviour is the best thing for our children. Let me read Hebrews 12. My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son. The Lord disciplines us because of his love for us. Discipline is a tool used by the Lord to show his love to his flock. So classroom management is a loving thing to do, and it's an expression of our love for the children in our care. Thirdly, it's key to our vision in Trinity Kids. Our vision is for children to know Christ's love and to grow in their maturity in him. So our children must be able to hear and understand and learn. Luke 11:28, blessed are those who hear the word of God and obey it. So our children must be able to hear the word of God as it is taught. And if our goal is to do this in our children's groups, to show Christ's love, our teaching must be heard. So good practice of listening in our classrooms will be key. Our vision is not give mum and dad some peace and quiet for an hour on Sunday morning. If so, we wouldn't need to do this. We aren't babysitting. So instead, we need to be ordered in our classroom in what it looks like that we can enjoy learning about Jesus. And finally, for safety reasons, managing our classrooms well is essential to loving our children and caring for them well. Proverbs 31:8, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Our children are vulnerable to themselves, to one another, and any regulars or other people at the South Wilts site on a Sunday morning that may want to cause them harm. So we have a responsibility to care, and keeping them safe in this group will look like having a safe classroom. So these are some of our key biblical principles. Hopefully none of that has come as a shock, but these are some of the grounding things that will be essential theologically as we think about what we are doing this evening. I'm going to hand over to Kat now.
Okay, so I am doing a whistle-stop tour. When I do this to trainee teachers, almost each bullet point is like a whole seminar session, okay? So I really don't want you to go away thinking, I'm going to dump a lot, but I'm just sort of giving the overarching thing. So I'm not expecting anyone to suddenly walk out this room, then suddenly perfect, and it all goes wonderful, and it doesn't. So that's just a little bit of a caveat. I just think one of the really important things that we also remember is that, and this is like, I don't know, are there any other teachers in the room? I don't know, one of the things that I've been challenged on through my kids' work teaching is it's not my normal teaching, and there is a distinction between the two, because we're doing this for God, we're doing this as part of his work, and although I believe completely that my teaching is part of my mission as well, it is slightly different. So I just find it really helpful to focus back on the fact that Jesus uses us in our weaknesses, and this is for him and for our church family, and not just an extension of work as another sort of tick off list thing. So just wanted to start there, which is where prayer becomes really, really important. And I think it's really great to pray together and to pray, for support for you guys, for the kids. And I don't know if you've ever experienced kind of having a particular child that you found particularly tricky, like whether that's in, outside of church or in church, but I've just had so many experiences, both in my job and working in church kids work, where I found a child a bit more challenging, and I've kind of committed to pray for them. And then God 100% changes your heart. Like there's some kids that I maybe taught, I don't know, 10 years ago or stuff, and they became like my most favourite child. Like, not that you should have favourites or anything, but you know what I mean? Like, I genuinely know that God has the power to change our hearts when we are struggling. So that I sort of think is really, really great. And that sort of, I mean, I do use that in my work as well, but that's something I just think to remember. So if there is a particular child that you think, I just don't know what to do with this child, I feel like we're not meshing, I feel like we're not on the same page, get on your knees and pray, because God will change that. You'll find with these essentials, we're sort of going to like you'll see them like looping back through in other areas. The first thing I want to say is like high standards. Have high expectations for the children. Children, and if you're a parent in the room, you know this, children meet your expectations. If you have sort of low and let's be honest, also they always are slightly boundary pushing. So if you sort of have expectations down here, they're like, okay, yeah, I'll do it like there. But if you actually have a higher expectation for them, they will meet it. So for instance, I don't know what it might be, but you know, if it's like, actually we don't talk when other people are talking, if we then start to let it happen down here and say, oh, they're only whispering, you'll find it's sort of a downward spiral. So actually we want to hold those high expectations. And the other thing is about forgiveness and grace. And again, it links back to praying with that child and not taking things personally. Children take stuff out on the people that they trust. And actually, if you feel you've had a particularly tricky week with a child, remember that they are hurting in whatever reason is causing them to act out, and they don't hate you. So I just think always model forgiveness, always model grace. And if it becomes a point, like my husband and I have to do this with our kids sometimes, the whole tag in, tag out thing. If you know, like one kid, you just want to go, you know, it's like I'm just gonna have to take a minute. So if you're ever getting to a point where you're feeling like it's a bit much or a bit too stressful or something else, take a few weeks off doing kids work or whatever it is that you need to do. Talk to Charlie, because actually this is meant to be positive for everybody. So I have a few little, like, one of the things you'll hear me say all the time is important for managing children is proactive, not reactive. And I will come back to that again and again. But what I mean is, don't wait until the child's kicking their legs all under the table. If you know a child is really nervous and they're at the door and they're clinging on to mum, if you go over that point and be like, oh, it's great to see you, Sarah. I know Sarah, so I'm going to use her name. I'm sorry. It's great to see you, Sarah. Come with me. I've got this to show you. You're much more likely to get them in. If you wait till they're crying, clinging around their mother's neck, and you're trying to like prise off the fingers, again, it's that thing, you're starting in not such a good place. You're going to have to do more in order to get back. So spot things, know your children, spot things and think, okay, I need to see, when that person walks to the door, I need to go straight over and get them to come and sit with me. And I need to say, wow, you've got the most beautiful top on, or whatever it is. And again, that comes really with a lot of the sort of behaviour management is getting in there before it's becoming a problem. Yeah. So, you know, let's all sit on the mat and get them to come straight in and sit down. Because if they're looping around the tables at high speed or climbing on the tables or crawling under them, it's going to be much more tricky than if they're already sat. Never humiliate a child. Charlie will sort of speak about the systems that you have in place when things do go wrong, but it's never about humiliating a child. And I always think the best times are when you can take a child to the side and have a quiet chat. Like, so as much as possible, we never want to have to humiliate. We are looking for respect and obedience, and actually it's an important skill for children to learn in like a community system. We live in a world where we are in relationship with loads of other people, and as they go through their lives, school, work, clubs, you know, there are always rules that we have to follow, and actually, you know, we need to help them learn that. And organisation is key. I am one of those really annoyingly organised people, but honestly, it saves so much hassle. I'm going to talk about this a bit later, but just think, if you think, it's a bit like the proactive, be one step ahead. Have the craft cut out, have the table set out, have your visual aids ready. Co-leaders, I'm going to talk about, or what do you call them, support leaders, get them sitting down where you want the kids to sit down. I know this is hard if you've got, and I'm a mum as well, and you've got to drop your children off before you go and do your group. But like, if you've got co-leaders already sat there, and then there's nothing worse. I tell you, the first thing that's going to make children misbehave is when you're trying to quickly finish cutting out the craft, whilst you're like desperately trying to find the Lego bricks you need for the illustration. Your back's to them. It's just, you're making it harder for yourself, is what I'm saying. So organisation is really great. Yes. So I'm going to give you sort of a toolkit this evening, hopefully some things that you can take away and might be a bit helpful. So one of the things that I find really is like the key to everything is knowing your children. Children, they come to us with a range, they don't come to us as like perfect people. They come to us, they've had, anything from difficult experiences in their life to the fact that the pet died, to the fact that they've lost a teddy. That for a child, we might just, it's like, oh, roll your eyes, pick another one. But actually, we have to remember that when they walk in our room, they've got loads of things going on in their brains. They might have not eaten their breakfast because they said no at the point and now they're hungry. So just knowing your children is key. They want us to remember stuff about them. So particularly if you're on kids, I don't know how it works with if you ever do the piggyback sessions, but if like someone says to you like one week, oh, I'm going swimming, like they love it if then you say, oh, how was swimming? Like, so it's that sort of like reinforcement for them that you know who they are, because they want to feel connected to you, and we want every child to feel loved and safe. I had the absolute joy of coming to your church, not this week but last week, and seeing all the amazing stuff you're doing. And actually I've done this training with a different church, and I've added in to my training since coming away the importance of emotional regulation. Now, it's important for every child. The basic idea is that children are not going to learn, they're not going to conform, they're not going to be able to listen and take that in if they do not feel safe. So if anyone's ever done child development, there's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The bottom level is like the physiological fed, water, shelter, that. The next level is that like feeling safe and secure. And I know that there's a number of individuals in your church, number of children that don't necessarily always feel that, particularly if it's with new people. And actually, we can't expect a child to sit down, listen and learn about something from the Bible if they don't feel safe. So again, having that connection with them, knowing them, helping them, because further up in the triangle there's like loving and belonging and connection and all those things, and you need all of that before the top bit of the triangle is like where we'd think about like learning. But learning isn't going to happen unless all these other pieces are in place. So actually knowing your children, helping them feel connected, belonging, loved, good about themselves, then you're at a place where you can start. Sarah's amazing at this. So if you ever, this would be multiple seminars if I was teaching you as teachers. But like, if you want to understand, like I know that one of your children has, I call it a calm box. What do you call it? Support box. Like, and I watched it used absolutely brilliantly, because at that point that child needed that. They were clearly not feeling safe for whatever reason, and that child needed that. And I watched Sarah be proactive, get in there before it became a massive problem, distract him, but in a way that was starting to sort of bring down his emotions and center him a bit more. And he was then doing puzzles, and he was just starting to bring himself down. And that, if that hadn't happened and Sarah hadn't stepped in there and seen he was feeling really, really unsafe and really, really emotional and big emotions, there could have been, I don't know the child particularly, but, that's when you get aggressive outbursts. It's where you might get running or all of those sorts of issues that then sort of escalate. So that proactivity of getting in there, helping them feel safe. Again, like, if a child's feeling a bit nervous, going and sitting next to them, like, or if they're new, and like finding something that connects them. Like, I had a wonderful chat with Darcy, all about earrings, and she was like, I have got a ridiculous number, but she was quite obsessed by them, and she had just one in one ear, and so we suddenly had this whole conversation, and it's like finding that, again, it goes back to that triangle, finding that bit of connection to them, whatever it is. Like, there's a boy in my church he struggles going to groups so much because he's so shy. He is obsessed by space. He is 4 and he knows more about space than I do. And so I sort of, if I'm ever in that group, I sort of have to like quickly look up a few space facts before I go and then be like, oh, William. So just that sort of like helping them to feel connected, so that they can emotionally regulate themselves and be in a position that they can actually take part with their peers, connect with you, and I mean, we need all of that before we get to the learning. Yeah. And I think as well, knowing your children, like you will have children that have SEN needs, you will have children that come from different family structures. As I said, you know, something like a pet dying or a grandparent dying is a big impact on a child. And so they all come with all of these things. And I want us the whole way through, I want us to focus on the positive. So it's not finding the areas of weakness for the children. It's knowing, I guess, what those are so that you can support them best. My daughter's, she's 6, she's dyslexic and currently going through screenings for ADHD and dyspraxia and a whole list of other things. She's, I tell you, I've learned I'm a significantly better teacher since having her. I look back to my 21-year-old self and think I want to slap myself for some of the things I said to parents. But like, she has all these needs. If she can't read, she can't write, even though she's 6, she tries her best. She has to use overlays. And so sort of knowing that about her, I know the co-leaders in her group, because we call them co-leaders, they will support her with that. If there's ever any reading, she's got her overlay. So it's not like, oh, I mean, she does drive you mad because she never shuts up. But it's like trying to see, if you like, the positive ways to support them with what their need is. Yes. And an explanation is helpful and important, but also it's not an excuse for disrespect and obedience. And so another of my little coined phrases, it's an explanation, not an excuse. So again, my daughter was very naughty at school this week during a fire alarm. And the teacher had to come and talk to me about it. And it's really tricky, particularly if you've got children with SEN needs, because she really does struggle not to talk, but she'd been asked multiple times not to talk and then was throwing leaves in the air. Anyway, it's really hard, but actually she has to not do that. She has to learn. So, you know, it's how you sort of speak to them. And I understand, you know, so it's sort of like, if you like, validating how they're feeling, but explaining, actually, no, you need to be quiet right now because we are listening. We need to make sure all our friends can learn. And it's really important because the most important thing here is that we learn more about God. So we need to be listening. Yes. What did I say? Yeah, I think I've said about that. Kids come with complex needs. Yeah, and Charlie was just going to talk through a few of the children that you have, because sometimes knowing little bits about them just helps you maybe understand them a bit more, or it might give you clues as to, you know, how best you can support them.
Thanks, Kat. So I'm going to just say some things that I've seen this term across the few groups that I step into. And what I'm going to list here is some unique traits of our children that can help us to steward towards positive things for them, given those unique traits. Not that these are things that they can also lead towards negative things if we're not doing that proactive stuff that Kat was talking about. Recent classroom experience for me, Evan loved completing his craft. That was really important for him. So giving good time before transitioning is going to be helpful for him. Hugo and Ted, they're very shy. So actually not wanting to volunteer for a game was not what they wanted to do, but actually they were really quite happy to partake and watch, and making room for thinking of a game that doesn't mean that you're an upfront person. You can partake in a background way. Logan found it harder to sit still than some of the other children, but he could articulate that he wanted a fiddle toy. And actually, the calm box, the support box that we have, if there are things that need to go in there to help our children, then please speak to me, or things that you can proactively think about. That's been really helpful. And he grabbed that, he could articulate that, and that helped him concentrate. Sophie, she really likes arts and craft. So for her, a pen in her hand is going to make her happy in Rooted. That could be that's a distracting thing that's taking her away from listening, but it could be a really helpful thing to think about what the passage is saying in an artistic way. Seth, when we had change of rooms in Diggers, that was really quite big, and that is a big thing for our Crash and Diggers age, particularly if there's big changes. Hence, some of the great work Abby's been doing in formalising some of the structure in Diggers, so it's familiar each week to help some of our children to be more regular with some of the structure. And you'll have that in all of our groups of some of the big things that they should notice as a familiar environment, helping with some of that safety stuff too for in our kids' groups. Josh really likes to be funny in his group setting, and that is a wonderful trait to bring our kids together. It makes a really wonderful, fun environment to build friendships in Rooted. That might mean that he needs more prompting to hear the challenge of the passage sometimes if he wants to be more funny. But that's a great trait and actually gels so much. So that's him. And finally, I've just got Willow. Really likes chatting. So she would not want to miss an opportunity to share her news. That's going to be important. So if you've got little time, that might be someone that you give more time to for her, because that's going to be more important for her. I could go on. They're just a few examples, but actually, basically just applying that, you will know lots of these children, lots better than me, as you're in more regularly. Thinking of those things are going to be really helpful to think about how you teach and what that looks like in applying some of from the games to the lesson. Back to you, Kat.
Yeah. So, like, for example, with that Willow situation, if you say to Willow, I will come to you, so that she knows that she is going to get a chance to speak. If you say that, you have to absolutely make sure you do go to them. But actually, we've got a similar child, like, say, I will come to you, but I'm going to take from 2 other people first, and then I'm going to come to you. So it's that sort of preempt, the sort of calling out, talking over it, but also validating her sort of desire and her feel of need to do that. And again, that's where knowing your children is so important. So if somebody is getting squiggly wiggly and they need a bit of a fidget toy or whatever, go and get it before they're lying on their back with their feet in the air, because it will come to that. So what is good discipline? The 3 C's: calm, clear, consistent. The focus of discipline is on the child's heart and not their emotional state, and it should always be done calmly. And if that means you need to take a minute before you deal with it, absolutely fine. But we want to do that in a very calm manner. Again, like with mine and my husband's tag in, tag out, if actually you need to say one of the co-leaders, can you go and speak to? Fine, because it needs to be done in a really calm manner, and it needs to be really clear. Sometimes things like calm down are not, if for some children, again, we're all working with different age children, and we need to have like age appropriate expectations. But what does calm down mean? What do they do? If I'm sort of being a bit loopy and sort of feeling really fidgety, and that person's taken the toy I want, and we say calm down, what does that mean? So it's being really, really clear, okay? I can see that you're upset that Jacob has the toy. Can you take some deep breaths for me? And then, Jacob, when you've had 5 minutes, or like whatever it is, but it's just keep it really clear. And also don't overtalk. Like you'll probably notice from this, I can overtalk sometimes. The younger the children, or the children that maybe have more big emotions that come out, they need it to be simple. Don't speak at them for 5 minutes on the do's and don'ts in group. It's not gonna help. Calm, clear, consistent, short, to the point. And we're going to come on later. Charlie's going to talk through the rules. We all know that children push boundaries. Every child pushes the boundary, regardless of, what that is. So if, as leaders, particularly when we're swapping, different ones each week, if we can have general consistency over the expectations, because otherwise, if one person lets them jump on the table, they're going to do it for the next person. So actually, if we're all sort of consistent within our groups of this is what we expect, this is how we do it, and like Charlie mentioned about the diggers and having this system, like children actually do, again, it's going back to that, the sort of psychology behind feeling safe. Children feel safe if they know what's coming. Having a visual timetable, I think I noticed that being used in one of the groups. That's really great because they can see what's coming next. If it's a child that's worried about mummy and daddy, I know they're going to come back then. We're on the game. I know I've got to do that, and then mummy and daddy are coming back. Or, because things like a change of room does make a difference. The other thing I think is really important is having correct expectations for our children. So, again, this is what I'm going to it's going to be slightly broad because we all work with slightly different age children, but you can't expect a preschooler to sit for 20 minutes and listen. They're not going to do it. They're going to get squiggly, they're going to talk, they're going to lie down, they're going to pick at their shoelaces, whatever it is. So again, we want to think, how can we make our sessions so that the children can access it the best? One of the things, I don't know how accurate this is, but basically think about it as 1 minute for every year of the child's life of what they can concentrate on in an auditory fashion. So that's not meaning that you've only got 6 minutes, but actually you've probably only got 6 minutes unless you're going to incorporate visuals or a bit of drama, or you're going to have a bit of movement, or you're going to sort of do 6-minute talk of listen, and then you're going to do a game. They won't sit for 40 minutes with a Bible in front of them. Or if they do, they're great. But my children certainly don't. So that's just to think about that, and also regularly reminding children of the rules before you jump in there and maybe start discipline. Remember, we listen to each other because we all want to learn about Jesus or whatever it is, and with your rules, and just that little reminders I always think are really good before you have to even if you're giving that reminder to that one child. That one child, Sarah's being really silly, and I'll say to the person next to them, oh my gosh, you're sitting so beautifully, look how beautifully you are sitting. You'll probably find Sarah will suddenly be like, I'm going to sit beautifully too, and I haven't actually had to go stop squiggling. So that's just another little thing. And age appropriate language as well. And I was in Jack's lesson, and he was brilliant with explaining some of the church words. Because we've got two things going on here. We need to because we've got the sort of age appropriateness in terms of the structure and what we're expecting of them. But also, as Christians, we have this whole sort of extra language, particularly if they're not Christian families. What on earth does resurrection mean? So just being aware of that as well, because there's nothing that turns a child off quicker than feeling completely out of their depth and not understanding what's going on. So again, it comes back to knowing your children. Because you might have a group of all church kids that know about the resurrection, and actually explaining that isn't, in that point, an appropriate thing to do. So, but doing that. And just thinking, about, the words that you use. So I'm talking about my church now, but in Diggers, we would say, kind words. We always use our kind words, or let's have kind hands and feet. The explorer's going to roll their eyes at you if you say, let's have kind hands and feet. So again, it sort of comes back to knowing what you're working with. Some things that can be helpful, a carpet or a mat or a space. Our diggers at my church, and I didn't go into a digger's room, but we've gone to a carpet shop and got, those samples of carpets that you can get. Do you have these in your church? Yeah, and it's really helpful. Because it's telling them this is where I sit without you being you need to sit there. Exactly, it's that expectation, it's things like that, and that's a very age appropriate way to do it. And how you set out the learning area it's difficult when you're in a secondary school because it's not very child friendly in some ways, but thinking about how you're grouping your tables, where you're gonna have them together. Are you gonna do 2 bits of group discussion, so you need 2 separate places, and just having a think about that organisation and what's sort of appropriate for the age of children. And then just going back to this organisation thing as well, you can't, we can, but 5-year-olds or 8-year-olds are not going to sit quietly for 5 minutes while you sort out the box of crayons. So thinking about that, and I'll come on to this later, but I always think, let's try and like positive. One of the things we've had in our church is that children always bring toys, and then they fiddle with their toys, and then they argue with their toys. And so, but rather than being like, I'm taking this away from your stop, we have a special place. And what a beautiful unicorn. He's going to sit over here while we're doing our learning. When we're doing the craft, then it can come back and sit with you. But for now, you'll still be able to see it, but it's going to sit over here. And we're going to put all of our toys over here. This is a special toy area. And or whatever it is. yeah, exactly. Holding to ransom. So just think, if things are coming in the room that you know are going to be a distraction, get rid of them straight away before it then becomes a battle, because you haven't said to them, you keep fiddling with the unicorn's tail, you're distracting everyone, I'm now taking it away from you. You've sort of done it beforehand. And I guess, again, when you know your children, if you know Sam and Mark cannot sit next to each other because they cannot keep their hands to themselves, get a leader to sit in between them. Preempt these things. Have your co-leaders like right in there. And there's lots of ways then that you can do behaviour management without it being a telling off system, because you're sort of setting it up. I think that's why I forget the discussion point. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So we've got there a few questions to hopefully apply some of these first things. We'll give you a few minutes to do that in your groups, and then we'll come back.
So I'm just going to go on to talk a little bit about like positive behaviour management, and like it's the idea of talking about what you want rather than what you don't. So let's see wonderful walking down the corridor rather than don't run, or let's make sure we're listening to our friends rather than stop talking. Just that, because I'm not saying there isn't a time for those conversations where you need to be really clear and that this is unacceptable or not. But before we get to that point, if we've tried in the positive way, it sort of also just lightens you up as a leader, because it can be quite draining if you're feeling like you're battling and you're sort of like paddling under the water really, really fast. And also things like catching the behaviour you want. Oh, you're sitting so beautifully, thank you so much. I've noticed, I love the I've noticed how Sam is listening to his friends. Like, it's just building up, and you're really explaining the behaviour you want. I've noticed how Sam is listening to his friends, and that's great. And then, Sam, it's now your turn to speak, so we'll all listen to you, sort of thing. See if you can change some of your language around, and also pick your battles, which links back to the children you know. Do not fight something if it's not worth it. What is the purpose? We're here to learn about the Lord Jesus. Is the behaviour stopping them or other people doing that? And again, there might be some child, like I taught one child that, he tapped. It drove me to distraction, but it was a calming mechanism for him, and he was listening and he was learning. And I sort of had to learn to not, it was very irritating. But it wasn't really disturbing the other children other than me. Not a battle to pick, because he was listening, he was learning. So just think about that. It's kind of a few practical strategies. You might have guessed I spend most of my career and most of my time working in Key Stage 1. So I do tend to give examples that are slightly lower down, but they can be all sort of, it can be developed. So changing your voice, changing your stance. There's nothing like, let me tell you, come here, I want to tell you something. Or just crouching down or moving where you are. Again, little things. It keeps their eyes moving, keeps them sort of, then they have to pay attention. Oh, she's suddenly whispering, so I can't just I'm now not listening. I have noticed moving to sit next to a child. Now, this is more where co-leaders come in, but if a child's, I won't do it now because I apparently have to stay by the mic, but there's nothing, even if, just sort of gently rotating around and carrying on teaching, but just standing behind that child that's doing whatever they shouldn't be doing, and you'll probably find they stop. And again, there's loads of different things like counting down, eyes on me, giving that, this has been mentioned before, but giving them that warning if something's going to change. So particularly if you've got children that, for instance, would be stressed by the idea of not finishing their craft, you've got 5 minutes left. just letting you know this is what's going to happen in 5 minutes. Visual timetables, I know a lot of you are using already, but they're really great for children to just, again, it's that safety aspect, they know what's coming. And then, or even things like, if a child's really struggling that day, give them a job. Hey, you can come be my helper. You can hand out all the glue sticks. You know, they just will love that. And I quite like the when and then, so I use a lot of when and then in my speaks. So when you've asked me in a kind voice, then you can have the car. When you're sitting quietly, then we can start the game. When you've all got your hands in your lap, then I will hand out the biscuits, or whatever it is. It can be quite useful, particularly if you've got children who are a bit more emotionally dysregulated. When this happens, then this will happen. Fiddle toys, specific cuddlies, all of that. I think there's a real place for them. I also think there is a purpose for them, and if it is not fitting the purpose, take it away. So a fiddle toy is to help a child concentrate. If that fiddle toy is distracting all the other children around, it's not fulfilling its purpose. And again, you know, you can say, remind them why they've got it. You've got this because it really helps you to listen when you're fiddling with it. But you need to keep it in your lap. And if you carry on distracting others, it's not helping. We're going to take it away. And again, my son had a dummy, and when he was in diggers, sometimes he'd really struggle to settle. So I'd send him so he'd have his dummy, but his leaders were amazing because once he'd settled, they'd take the dummy away. Because, I mean, he was talking by that point, and it's nothing more annoying than a child talking with a dummy in their mouth. But actually, and it was that, you feel safe and settled now, Dexter, so we're going to put the dummy over here, and you can have it later. So it's that idea of, what's the purpose of it? Is it fulfilling the purpose, and does the child understand that? If not, get rid of it. So a classroom should not have 21 children with a fiddle toy, because they do not all need the fiddle toy. And if they are, we need to then reevaluate our entire planning because something's wrong. But there are definite times when a specific cuddly, you know, my son's got a monkey, it goes everywhere with him still. I'm still like, we're now leaving it in the backpack at nursery, but you know, it's still there. But it's how that they are using it in an appropriate way. And again, if a child midway through a group was to get really upset, if you've got their monkey in the corner, just monkey, come sit with us for a little bit, just while we calm down. Let's take a few breaths and give monkey a little cuddle. So all of that sort of things. One of the things that is really hard, even for training teachers, when I'm training teachers, one of the things when I'm watching them with classes for the first few times that they find really hard is transitioning between things. It is just the pitfall moment when all the bad behaviour happens, when the chaos happens. It just is that moment. So planning and being organised for how to transition is actually a really helpful tool for keeping things running smoothly. For a start, how you set up the room. If you've got a big group, do you actually want to do their craft or your discussion time in 2 smaller groups? So therefore you want 2 group areas, 2 tables, whatever it is. One of our groups at my church, the children are now doing the craft whilst answering the discussion questions. It's because we were finding that the discussion time wasn't effective because they needed something more, but actually, and also they have the same groups every week that we have sorted. So we have kept Sam and Mark apart, and they sit in the tables in their groups, and they do the craft whilst they're having their discussion time. So that's something that worked for that group in my church. So a few little tips that you could use. Think about giving them that warning before you transition, but think about maybe being creative with how you do it. So if you're sending them off to the tables, okay, I'm going to send anyone that had toast for breakfast. Like, if you send off 20 children at once to the tables where there's big chairs, they're going to push and shove, and that's my chair, and that's my chair. You know, so maybe send them in. You can still do it quite pacily, right? Everyone that's got shoelaces, off you go. Wow, they are walking so quietly. Let's see if the kids who are wearing blue can be just as quiet. So all of those sorts of things. Freeze. Tapping children on their heads, and so when I tap you on the head, you know, you can always make it into a bit of a game. I don't know if you might use a clapping system. Like, don't incorporate this if it doesn't work. But like in my class, I don't like clapping, so I would go shh shh shh, and then they all have to go shh 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 back because then they have to stop talking, or shh, 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 shh. They have to repeat the rhythm. But again, and just kind of copy, maybe hands on your head, and almost start it without you don't even need to say what it is. And if you find they'll start copying you, and they'll doing it. Or this is one that always gets, can you do this? And they're like, oh yeah, that's easy. Okay, out, in, out, in. And ultimately you end up doing one and the other. So one goes up, down, and the other goes out, in. But like, there's nothing that quietens down. This is more for your older groups. There's nothing that quietens down explorers by going, can you do that? And again, with younger ones, like using songs. The other thing that I just want as a caveat is that we are all individuals as leaders. If you don't feel comfortable singing a song about making a circle, don't do it, because it's not going to feel right. Like, I'm very happy to sing a song about making a circle big and round, and let's do it in a hurry and all sit down. I won't put you through it. But like, you know, if I'm ever leading in diggers, I often use songs in transition times, or let's move like mice, whatever. But if you feel uncomfortable doing that, find a strategy that you feel comfortable with, because you are individuals as well. And I don't expect you all to suddenly get out your wands and crawl around like mice. But some of those things can just really help. Transitioning them from one thing to the next. And again, that organisation, if the craft is already out, then you can actually focus on then transitioning them, because you're not thinking, where are those 5 glue sticks that we've got to share between 20 children? You know, actually then you're thinking, oh, my word, Sarah's walking so beautifully, let's all, Sarah, can you hop? You know, whatever it is, and then you've suddenly got them all there. Flexibility in sessions. Sort of when we're planning, if we have those expectations in mind and thinking about, because you use mustard seeds as well, my church uses mustard seeds. There's a lot in mustard seeds. You know, I always say, plan what works for your group. If you need to, like some of the games, sometimes I look at a game and I go, I am not doing that. Or I look at a craft and think, my husband and I are going to be spending our entire Saturday evening cutting that craft out. Like this week's one, let me tell you, my husband was leading this week and it was this chair that like folds up, and I was like, but like have that ready in like, so when you're planning, think about these things through. Don't stick we spent hours cutting out that chair. Have you done that bit of David? Because we're sort of on a par, I think. There's a chair bit. Maybe it's next week. It's this sort of like fold out chair thing. It looked great, but in practice. But actually, we although our Saturday night was very exciting, cutting it out and sticking it in the right way, it did mean it was a smooth transition. So thinking about that organisation and planning, but then also being flexible, because sometimes you've got a really small group. Other times you've suddenly got loads of kids that you don't know where they've come from, or loads of non-Christian children, and then you have to think, okay, these guys are not our church kids. We don't actually know what they know or where they are. Don't be afraid to make a change. If you think, hang on a minute, I've got another 10 minutes of explanation to do on the tabernacle, but your kids are like, woohoo! What's the main point of the lesson? What are you trying to teach the children? Cut it. Come back to it later if it's really important. If not, pause and do a game. Do the game there. Because if it's prepared, doesn't matter if you juggle it around a bit, because you're like, my game's there. Right, we're going to do the game. Think about that. And again, movement breaks and things like that. But again, think about how you do it in a way that keeps the expectations. So let's play Simon Says, or if you're with the little ones, you know, do a bit of a dance, whatever it might be. You know, you can do movement breaks and you can get the moving. And even if it's just like up and down or whatever it is, but you can do it in a way that is slightly more contained and boundaried, because what we don't want to do is heighten them. Because if it's a free-for-all, ultimately, children will bash into each other. Someone will be upset. Someone will say, I won, and then someone else will be upset. And then you're spiralling. And then you're going to have to bring it back down, which is much harder than if you're just like, the use of smaller groups for discussions, again, can be really useful. And as I said, one of our groups, they have set groups that they go to every week. And we have strategically put children in those groups. And actually, they don't mind at all, because it's only a small part of the session. So it's not like they're not with their friends the whole time, but it just means that they go and do craft on Blue Table. And, you know, so that's been helpful for us. And so we've now got a bit more time, Charlie, for that bit.
Over to you. That some of those things would be good to think about and apply. We'll spend a few minutes thinking about these questions.
And going back to that consistency thing, if in your group you think there's a few things that would work really well, having this chance to share them now, because, and again, you know, you don't all have to do it in the same way. We're not all the same people, but actually it's that if there's a bit of consistency that we always count down to the carpet or whatever, or we always have the table set up like this, that, again, security, safety for the children, and all of that can be helpful. I also, you can tell I'm slightly patronising. I can't help it. I spent the poor trainee teachers probably think I'm nuts when I talk to them like children. But it's just that example. Now, one of the things that I think for behaviour management is absolutely your most important tool is your support leader. Because the person who is teaching has planned it, they've got the aim in their head, the Bible passage, they are thinking about what's coming next, they're thinking about what they're teaching, and they're managing all of that. That is a lot to juggle. They don't want to be stopping every second to deal with every little thing. It then disrupts the flow. So the best tool that you have for supporting children is your co-leaders. So co-leaders should be, unless there's like a medical issue, my opinion, I'm quite a hard teacher trainer, I'm afraid, when I have new teachers. They should be sitting on the floor. Or if they're on a chair, they're next to somebody. Get with the children. Sit yourself between those two people that are going to talk. But don't be like, I'm sitting, say, Sarah, I really want to sit by you today. Come and sit by me. You know, you can still do it in a positive way. And model as well listening. So if a child is trying to speak to you and they're trying to tell you something and the teacher's teaching, I really want to hear that, but I'm just listening. When we get to the craft, I'm going to come and ask you. So it's sort of still supporting them and not dismissing them, because there is an element that you will need to be doing that, but also, when possible, modelling, I'm listening, isn't this bit really interesting? Let's just listen. Or if there's a question asked, what do you think? You know, all of that sort of thing. So you are then dealing with that. And it's a team altogether. And I always think, when I'm in the classroom, absolutely, TAs are like the heroes to me, and like, again, co-leaders, because we're one team. Move. If Sam and Mark are being silly, move them. And also, this is where it comes in, where actually a co-leader could take one of them aside and just say, we really need to be listening, because right now, not all of your friends can learn and you can't learn. But you are doing that quietly as a co-leader to the side, and the teacher at the front isn't stopping the whole room and going, Sam, Now, I'm not saying there isn't a time when that's important, particularly if it's a safety issue. If there is a safety issue at any point, absolutely, do not do that. That is very unsafe. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with disciplining like that. If you put some of these building blocks in place beforehand, you might not necessarily get to that. If they're all running around like crazy, they might actually need a stop, rather, you can't whisper to someone when they're like completely out of hand, but like seeing those things in advance. And again, what I watched amazingly with Sarah is that de-escalation, that she noticed something was bubbling. So before it got to an explosion, you get in there and see if you can like bring the levels of emotion down. Again, so it's proactive, not reactive, active participant. And actually, I genuinely do believe that is your best tool for supporting the children to be positive behaviour when you're is your co-leaders, or you call them support leaders. Yeah. Or if the child needs a fidget break or needs a support box or something, that's when a co-leader can be like, this is really tricky for you, come on. And, you don't really, it's to trying to sort these things out without disrupting the flow of the teaching and without disrupting everyone else. It doesn't always work, and there's nothing wrong with you from the front certainly giving reminders and warnings, and there may definitely be those times where you need to have stern words, because it is, going back to what Charlie said at the beginning, we've got high standards, safety is really important. We need to make sure we're safeguarding our children in all those ways. But having co-leaders, I just think is amazing, and I just think in some ways they are the best tool that you possibly have. And also, when you're support leading, what might the leader need? Like, if you've got a group that you can't put the pens out before you start the craft, because if you put the pens out, they'll be taking the lids off, flicking them. Make sure as a support leader, you've got your 3 pots of pens for your 3 tables. So when the teacher's explaining the craft, as soon as they finished, out goes the pens. They've listened whilst the craft's been explaining. You haven't got pens all over the floor. So again, that sort of, or if there's a game and you're knocking down the walls of Jericho and you're throwing newspaper, you know, as a co-leader sorry, I keep calling it co-leader because that's what's in our church. As a support leader, think, you know, maybe sweeping them up. Like whatever it is, like just think, again, proactive. Can I be that one step ahead? What does the leader need that I can best support them? And I'm going to move on as well to working with parents. Now, this is, again, something that I think can be quite a challenge at times. I think sometimes, well, this might be yeah, but like I think sometimes I know before I had children of my own, I found that quite a daunting thing to like talk to parents and stuff. But they are the experts in the children. They know their children best. They know what their triggers are. They know what helps make them feel safe. They know, they know their children. Ask them for guidance, but you can do it in a positive way. Like, also, I think it's really keen that we talk to parents all the time and not just about the, and with one of my children, I am that mum in the playground where the teacher sort of looks at me and then we don't want the parents to be like, oh my word, the leader's coming to talk to me, because we don't want them to feel, we're one church family all together. We love these children, we're doing it together. So having those dialogues with parents, showing the parents that we want to understand their children, that we want to know them better and help them better. I love a good positive sandwich. If you need to feedback about something that's more challenging, so-and-so said some great answers today. We did have a bit of a problem with listening to our friends, and actually I had to give him a few warnings about talking when he shouldn't have been. But I really enjoyed his contribution to this or something. So I still think we can feed back to parents without it being sort of a big thing. And I know Charlie's going to speak a bit more about your sort of rules and sanctions, but kind of keeping that in mind, and also knowing your church family and your parents in your church. Some parents are more sensitive, and we need to tread sensitively, because kids have it's a lot being a kid, and they've got a lot of things going on. And some parents are very, I'm quite straight down the line, and I want to know what's going on with my kids, and I'm not at all. I know how difficult one of mine is, but actually it is being really sensitive with parents who maybe don't feel as confident in the church situation particularly. Like, I feel I've been in church my whole life, I'm very lucky, I've got a wonderful supportive husband, and we're quite confident in who we are and in our faith and all of that. So keeping those things in mind as well, knowing your children, knowing your families, building that relationship with them, and they are the experts. So share positive things with the parents as well, because otherwise, they're that parent that's always like, oh, every time you walk towards them. And we don't want that to be happening. That happens in schools and in school playgrounds. We don't want it to be happening at church as well. Okay, there's another reflection. Oh, no. Yes. Are we doing the reflection first, or is it worth doing this bit first?
I think we could do that first. Yeah.
Sorry. So, just there's a bit of time now, again, thinking about like the role of co-leaders, and just thinking, like, carrying on the discussions you've been having.
I think we'll come back together in a bit. Great. Hopefully that was helpful. I'm going to finish now with going through our behaviour management procedure. And this is intentionally the last section. This is because this is then the formal process, the procedure that for managing specific behaviour that should come back off the back of implementing lots of things that Kat's really helpfully thought us think through. So if we're being proactive, not reactive, or if we're setting up well, there will be some times that we do need to sanction, to discipline, to correct. And this is our formal process that I hopefully I've shared out a few times before, but so I won't take ages on this, but this just to go through here as the key steps for doing this. it's key that we can't sanction a child if our study is too dry to listen to, or if they don't understand the instruction that we're giving, or if it's boiling hot and it's just so uncomfortable. We must ensure that what we're implementing to the best of our ability is techniques to love and care for our children well before giving these sanctions. This comes off the back of everything we've seen. So there we've got our 3 main rules. So to listen to leaders, be kind to others, and do not touch equipment. I know that, as Kat said, we often have that up on our boards. Do go through that, and particularly that you can't overemphasise, particularly when many of our groups have got new children coming in quite regularly, which is a joy. They're unknown, and they do need to be reminded. So those 3 things that we have as our key rules will be helpful to start with, to ensure that our children know what we expect of them in the groups. So then the 4 steps to warn and sanction. So this is our behavioural management procedure. This is when we have something that is what I've called here unacceptable behaviour. So in our behavioural management process, there's quite a few things that might be, but where it's sin, we need to call that out. And when we're not, a child is not enabling others to listen to themselves, listen to the key vision of what we're doing in Trinity Kids. So that's when we'd follow each of these 4 things. So firstly, a warning, a verbal warning, should occur as a request to stop unacceptable behaviour. And at this stage, the children should be told what the specific behaviour is that's unacceptable, and an explanation of why that behaviour is unacceptable. They need to not just be called out to stop X, they need to have an explanation so that you are giving reason to for them to understand that what is happening is unreasonable. And linking it back to what hopefully is on the board as our rules can be a helpful explanation, but also our vision of Trinity Kids. If we're here to know and love the Lord, then X that you're doing is not enabling that. So that explanation is key. And then we have a second warning. So second warning is the second time a child is told to stop their unacceptable behaviour. And this ideally from, as Kat's been saying, hopefully the support leaders are proactive in that, and this can helpfully happen away from the group. So they should be told what this second warning is, what this unacceptable behaviour is, and why it's unacceptable again. They should be told that if it happens again, that a parent will be told that this has happened. So it's not sprung out of the blue for them, but if there's a third time after this, that a parent will be informed, so they know what has happened and what they can expect to happen if this behaviour doesn't change. And then we have removal and parental involvement. So removal should occur after a third persistent incident of unacceptable behaviour. So a third time after something that's unacceptable happens, then as hopefully a support leader, but if the support leader is doing something, leader can also make contact with our site team. So it'd be a helpful thing to know when you meet for prayer each week, to know who the site person is, to be able to contact them. Their contact is in your register, and to collect a parent to come and remove the child from the group for at least 10 minutes. This is for their benefit, so that they know that what has happened thus far is not conducive for them to learn and study, and our aim in Trinity Kids, but also for the benefit of the other children in the group. If what's happening is actually counterintuitive for our children to learn, we are doing something in Trinity Kids. We're not just babysitting as we're waiting for an hour to dry up at the end and parents to come back. That's not what we're doing. We are teaching. We have an aim. And actually, if there's behaviour that is not allowing that to happen, then we do need some more help in that. So the site should be contacted for the parent to come If the child is willing or able to return to the group after 10 minutes, then they should be accompanied by their parent for the remainder of the group. Just so that if we have this problem again, we're not firefighting that this. We need to then say, well, for this morning, the parent will now be in this group to help them settle for the rest of the time. In actually, that's not easy. And I want to go back to what Kat was saying about the sensitivity and things with parents and getting them involved. It's not necessarily going to be an easy thing to do, but if we have that vision of loving all the children well, so they can listen and understand in our group, and also them well, so that they are hearing what's we're being taught, great things that are being taught in Trinity Kids. We do need this to happen, and having the parents involved and sensitively doing that is going to be key, and being quite clear what thing has triggered this. If you followed this rightly, then there should be some substance to give to a parent to validate why this has been the action that's taken for them, and knowing this is going to be helpful to communicate to them what is needed for going forward. That fourth step is really if this is persistent behaviour over several weeks, and or something dangerous, if a child brings a knife or something that just means that actually straight away this child needs to be excluded. That's what that fourth step is. But that will be in conjunction with an elder and lead safeguard to do that. That would not be on you. That would be both flagged, but then that would be in conjunction with parents and the elders to ensure that this child is, even for a time, not a part of Trinity Kids. Great. So that is our behavioural management procedure. That is lots of our thinking on and Kat's wise, helpful insight for our classroom management training. For this procedure, particularly that is in your WhatsApp groups. So if you click the info at the top, that is access for that. And it is helpful to be familiar with that, particularly in some weeks that can be quite complex in some of our groups. This is going to help you and them to know what is expected in those groups. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. We've got about just over a quarter of an hour left. What I'd love us to do is to do a few things before we head. So to go back into our groups and think about maybe some take-homes. If there is something practical that does need to change, or that we do need to think about is consistent as we lead when we're not all together, that would be really good to note. I'm going to likely chat with Jo, Alison and Abby afterwards to distribute that out to a wider group. That would be helpful. And have some time to pray. And around 10 to, if you've got any questions, Kat said she's very happy to take some questions. So think about those too. But I'll leave you for till 10 to get a few take-homes. Hopefully that shouldn't take too long. That should be off the back of what you've already been saying. And then pray in some of these things. And we'll be back 10 to for questions. Thank you. Kat, it's been a real treat and blessing to have you here. Thank you so much for all your help exploring this topic. Kat is going to be around, so do keep rinsing. But I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray now for us, for those that need to head as we close. Let's pray. Father God, we give you great thanks for the blessing it is to be a church with so many children. Father, for the joy of seeing the gospel in young hearts and minds, and the blessing and treat that we have to explore that with our children in our church. Lord, I do pray that you would help us and equip us as we serve week by week to love these children well, to show them Jesus, do pray, particularly in light of what we've seen this evening, to be implementing some wise structures and ways that we can manage our classrooms well, helping us to show Jesus in the way that we love these children. We lift this all in your Son's name. Amen. Thank you so much for coming out, Susie.